They sold my engagement ring, Julian's ring, the one we designed together before he died, and they used the money. So my sister could find herself in Bali, no warning, just a text and a photo of her meditating on a beach with the caption, "Healing is expensive but worth it. Hi, I'm Maddie." I stayed quiet for a long time until I realized silence was the script they needed me to follow. Have you ever been erased by the people who claim to love you? What would you do if your grief was turned into someone else's brand? Tell me, what would you have done in my shoes? They sold the ring, Julian's ring, my ring, and they told me over coffee like it was nothing. I didn't cry, not at first. It was too early for that, too quiet. The window in my room was cracked open, letting in that damp Denver air, pine melting frost, the faint scent of whatever breakfast my mother hadn't finished making. The drawer was half open like it was waiting for my hand. Same drawer, same morning routine, same reach. But the velvet box wasn't there. I blinked, then looked again. Lifted the receipts, the old candle stub, even the wrinkled tissues I kept meaning to throw away. Nothing. My stomach didn't drop. My chest didn't seize. Just a kind of hollow recognition, like when you open your mouth to speak and forget what you were going to say. Downstairs, I heard the low scrape of a chair against tile, then the soft clink of a spoon in ceramic. Still barefoot, I walked down the hallway, one sock on one, off an imbalance that weirdly mirrored what was happening inside me. The stairs creaked. No one looked up. My mother was flipping through a magazine, sipping from the mug she's had since I was 12, chipped at the rim handle, glued back once after a fight she pretended never happened. Dad sat at the far end of the table behind his paper, spreading raspberry jam with military precision. Morning, Mom said, not looking up. "Do you know where my ring is?" I asked. There was a pause, but not long enough to mean anything. She flipped another page. What ring? I stood straighter. Julian's ring, the one he designed, the one I've kept in the drawer for 2 years. She looked up then, just briefly. "Oh," she said, like she'd forgotten to mention the weather. That. "We sold it." Sienna needed support for her retreat in Bali. The sentence landed like she was talking about lentils or light bulbs. I stared at her, my arms suddenly too heavy to cross. My father chimed in from behind the newspaper. "You hadn't worn it in months, Maddie. We figured it wasn't important anymore." My voice didn't rise. It just landed firm and cold. "It wasn't yours to sell." Dad folded his paper calmly. "You've been living here almost 2 years rent-free. We've supported you. That's not the same." He met my eyes then. Not angry, not apologetic, just tired. It was just sitting there. We thought Sienna could use the help. There was so much I could have said about what that ring meant, what it held, how it was the last thing Julian and I chose together. How we picked the diamond from a vendor in Boulder, how he had daisies etched inside the band because of that motel in Utah where they grew wild behind the parking lot. But none of that would have landed. They weren't listening, not really. So I turned, walked back upstairs. My legs felt like they weren't mine. Back in my room, I opened the drawer again, this time slower. Nothing had changed. The empty space stared back at me like it had something to say. And then I saw it. Folded in the back, barely visible under the stray receipts, was the cloth. Navy velvet stitched with tiny white daisies in each corner. Still soft, still mine. I sat down on the floor, legs crossed, like I used to sit in kindergarten. Laid the cloth on my lap. Touched the corner seam where the fabric had started to fray. My fingertips traced each daisy like reading Braille. I tried to hear Julian's voice in the room, in the quiet, in the places memory hides when the present gets too loud. "They didn't just sell the ring," I whispered to no one. "They sold what was left of him." The quiet that followed wasn't peaceful. It was dense, like breathing through fabric. I didn't move for a long time. Just sat there, my hands still on the cloth, my feet cold against the floor. Eventually, I reached for my phone, turned it on with a small exhale, the kind you do when you're not sure you want to know what's waiting. The screen blinked to life. Notifications, missed calls. Then there she was, Sienna, smiling barefoot, glowing in filtered golden light, standing on a polished deck surrounded by ferns. Bali, her arms raised in some pseudo-surrender to the universe yoga pose, captioned in cursive overlay, "Healing is expensive, but so worth it." And suddenly I remembered how Julian once told me If they treat your grief like it's clutter, you walk. You walk and don't look back. But I wasn't walking. Not yet. Sienna's glow-up was bought with silence. My silence. The sun had climbed just high enough to slip through the blinds, turning everything in my room into long-angled shadows. A chipped mug of black coffee sat cooling on the sill. No sugar, no milk, not even hazelnut anymore. The scent was dull now. Industrial, like something poured from a bulk bag instead of chosen. My phone rested in my palm screen, already unlocked. I hadn't planned to scroll. But that's how these things happen, accidentally, reflexively. Muscle memory has a cruel way of leading you where your heart doesn't want to go. There she was. Sienna, barefoot again on a beach this time. White robe tied loosely, long hair swept back, sun behind her like a halo. Caption, "Release the version of you that had to survive." She's tired. The likes were in the thousands. Comments swelled beneath her. "You are such a light. How do you always shine like this?" Healing goals, I kept scrolling. Each photo looked like a scene from a meditation app. Stone, steps, green, juice-filtered oceans. Her face always turned slightly toward the light, like she'd learned just where to tilt her jaw to make redemption photogenic. Somewhere in the middle of it all, I stopped feeling sad. What replaced it was harder to name, a sort of hollowing. Not pain, not yet. Just absence. Like she had taken up all the air in a room I hadn't even realized I was still standing in. I set the phone down and turned to my desk. The top drawer creaked open with familiar weight. Inside were all the things I'd been meaning to organize, but hadn't had the heart to touch. Letters, envelopes, Post-its with Julian's handwriting. One scrap in fading ink read, "Let's make it last even if we don't." I smiled just barely, then folded it flat and laid it beside my laptop. The rest came easily after that. Receipts, appraisal documents, email printouts from the jeweler, even an old text thread where we joked about the bandwidth thinner than your patience when I forget the laundry he'd written. I hadn't laughed then. I did now. A small one. Quiet. I plugged in the scanner. It blinked once, then hummed to life like it remembered me. Each page fed in slow. The printer light scanned over years I'd tucked away in drawers and inboxes. Each beep felt like proof, not of worth, but of existence. I created a new folder, called it Truth. Then I opened my phone again, went back to the post of Sienna on the beach. She had just added a new story, her sipping a smoothie, eyes closed with the text, "Healing isn't always pretty, but it's always worth it." Without thinking, I typed, "Hope the healing was worth it. I paid for it." I hit send. The comment blinked once posted. No emojis, no edits, just honesty. And for a second, I felt something like breath again. Not relief, but resistance. I set the phone down. 15 minutes passed, maybe 20. I got up to refill my coffee and left it sitting there face down on the comforter next to the velvet cloth I still hadn't put away. When I came back, the screen had gone dark. But a single alert glowed beneath the lock screen. A text from a number I didn't have saved anymore, but I recognized the writing style. "Don't make this about you." No greeting, no name. Just that. I didn't reply. I just stood there letting the phone rest in my hand like it was something heavy. Too heavy to throw, too familiar to drop. That phrase echoed in my head longer than I wanted it to. Don't make this about you. I hadn't made it about me. That was the problem. For years, I had made it about keeping peace, about holding space, about shrinking so others could expand. Mom used to say it like a badge, "You're the strong one, Maddie. Help me keep the peace." But peace kept costing me more than it ever cost them. I sat at my desk again. The folder Truth blinked back at me from the screen. I renamed the subfolder inside. From Ring Docs to Inheritance Memory Edition. I didn't know what I was building yet, just that I needed to keep going. Before someone else took the story and rewrote it in white linen and flower crowns. I stared at the screen. Not just hurt replaced. I wasn't unraveling, I was archiving. The rain had started sometime before lunch, thin gray persistent. It tapped the co-working windows like it had something urgent to say but didn't know how to phrase it. I sat in the corner booth near the copier, a plain laminate table, shared power strip, and a half-dead succulent no one had watered in weeks. The kind of place where everyone had their headphones in, and no one asked questions, which made it perfect. My laptop woke from sleep. I clicked open the folder I had renamed the night before Truth. Inside were subfolders, receipts, appraisals, photos, ring design memos. I had named one Misuse Timeline, but so far it was empty. That changed when I brushed the trackpad and an old podcast tab auto-loaded. And then her voice. Sienna. You can't grow if you keep clinging to pain. Even rings. I froze. The headphones weren't even in yet, but her words felt like they bypassed sound and drilled straight into my ribs. I leaned forward, lowered the volume, but let it play. The host's voice chimed in. That's powerful. Can you give an example of that release? There was a sip, a pause, and then, some people build their identity around loss, around objects soaked in trauma. I had to choose joy. I gave up everything, even symbolic things, like rings, because you can't carry pain and expect your hands to be free. I hit pause, not because I was finished, but because I wasn't sure how to keep listening without shaking the laptop. I downloaded the episode, renamed the file Podcast Sienna Rewrite, moved it into Misuse Timeline. Then I sat very still, let the rain keep tapping, let the world keep spinning. Eventually, I stood, gathered my things into a canvas tote, and stepped outside. The cemetery was quiet, as always. Just wet grass, uneven stone, and the faint hum of wind. I didn't bring flowers, just the daisy I had pressed between my grandmother's Bible pages when I was 15. Julian had once called me accidentally old-fashioned for keeping it. I laid it gently on his stone. They used your love to fund her brand, I whispered. And that was all I could say. Back at the co-working space, Noah gave a small wave from the espresso bar. He didn't ask questions, just nodded toward the shelf with extra chargers. I nodded back. That was our version of friendship quiet recognition, no pressure. I settled into the same seat. Opened Gmail, typed Julian Brooks into the search bar. Emails loaded hundreds. Conversations about rings venues, joint bank accounts, wills. I found one thread between him and Jasmine Ortega, a family friend who had helped draft some trust paperwork after Julian's mom passed. The subject line, ring held in conditional trust. I clicked. Inside, the language was simple. The ring was considered joint property until marriage. If one party passed before the ceremony, the surviving party retained full ownership. Me. There was no ambiguity. I took a breath, then started typing. Affidavit of Claim and Misuse. Prepared by Madeline Hale. Date, April 24, 2023. The words came slowly at first, but they came. I recounted when the ring was made, when Julian proposed, when he died, when I found it missing, the sale I hadn't authorized, the podcast, the quote, the branding. I attached scans, screenshots, the trust agreement, audio timestamps. I didn't embellish, I didn't accuse, I just recorded. When I finished the first page, I printed it. The machine warmed slowly, like it understood the weight of what it was about to produce. The page came out crisp, warm. I held it in both hands like it was fragile. Then I reached into my bag, took out the navy velvet cloth, folded the flash drive inside carefully like it was breakable, like something sacred, like memory. I didn't know where the letter would go yet, but I knew it needed to exist. I smoothed the paper flat, sealed it with a paper clip, placed it into a folder labeled Pending. Some truths don't scream, they document. Julian's mom had said that once at his wake of all places. She was holding a mug of too strong coffee, her hands wrapped around it like it could keep her from falling apart. People think truth is always loud, she told me, but sometimes it's just something quietly written down and stored, so you never forget who you are. At the time, I hadn't known what she meant. Now I did. This wasn't revenge. It was record-keeping, and I was almost ready. They gave her the mic. I gave them the silence they didn't expect. The gallery smelled like lemon polish and high hopes. You could feel it in the way the servers floated around with trays of crostini and sparkling water garnished with edible flowers. Even the lighting felt curated. Warm string bulbs hung just high enough to cast halos on the wine glasses, but low enough to feel intimate. The place had that transformational energy Sienna loved to name-drop in her captions. I entered through the side like staff. No fanfare. Just a nod to the coordinator, a folded invitation in my clutch, and a line rehearsed in my head for days. I'm a featured donor. Not on the program. No one questioned me. Not really. I took a seat near the back by a support column wrapped in cream linen. My dress was plain black sleeves to the elbow. No jewelry, no lipstick. I didn't need to be seen. I just needed to see. At the front of the room, a stage stood waiting, modest in size, but dressed in soft uplighting, a tall vase of white orchids at the edge. Sienna stood just behind the curtain, talking to a woman I recognized from one of her sponsorship reels. Her gown was ivory silk, her hair twisted into something effortless and expensive-looking. She didn't see me. Or maybe she did, and chose not to. Patricia and Martin Hale sat center table flanked by board members and influencers in pastel tones. Patricia laughed too loudly at something the woman beside her said. Martin raised his glass in agreement. Neither one turned around. They didn't know I was here, and that was fine. The room dimmed slightly. The host walked up to the stage and tapped the mic gently. Tonight, she began, "We celebrate the resilience of women, those who rise, who lead, who heal." Applause. And now, a very special guest, a coach, a mentor, a voice of light. Please welcome Sienna Hale. Louder applause. Sienna stepped forward with a practiced pause, the kind that lets camera shutters capture movement like poetry. She touched the mic, closed her eyes for effect, then smiled. "Some of us carry wounds," she began. "Others carry wisdom. I chose healing." Murmurs of approval rippled through the room. She continued, "There was a time I thought pain was part of my personality, that I had to wear it, name it, justify it. But healing taught me to release, to forgive, to love louder than loss." She placed one manicured hand over her chest. "We all carry things we didn't choose, but we get to choose what we pass on." I chose light. Applause again. I stood, walked toward the sound booth in the back corner. The coordinator, a young woman with a headset and clipboard, turned toward me. "Excuse me," I said quietly. "This was submitted last week. Donor addendum. It's been approved." She hesitated. I handed her a card inside the folio. It had a note signed and time-stamped by the event director. She scanned it, brows furrowed, then lifted. "Okay," she whispered. "I'll cue it." Sienna was thanking the organizers, calling the gala a dream space for feminine rebirth. Her voice floated still sweet. The applause rose with each poetic pause. And then it stopped. The lights dimmed a second time. The screen behind the stage, which had looped stock footage of waves and women hugging, blinked to black. A title faded in memory of Julian Brooks. No music, no narration yet, just stillness. Then my voice, calm, low, unrushed. "My name is Madeline Hale. I don't need recognition tonight. I already had what mattered." And I lost it. Gasps. Someone dropped a fork. 2 years ago, I was engaged to a man named Julian. He designed a ring for me carefully with meaning. We picked the stone together. We engraved the band. Images filled the screen. Photos of us smiling beside the jeweler. A scan of the receipt. A handwritten note from Julian. "If we ever lose each other, keep this. It's the map back." Then a paused Instagram post. Sienna arms outstretched in Bali. Caption: "Healing is expensive, but so worth it." I kept speaking. That ring was sold without my consent. Its value redirected. Its meaning erased. Then used to fund a narrative where I did not exist. Silence. Another image. A screenshot from the podcast transcript. Even rings. Objects soaked in pain. Then audio. Her voice. "Some people cling to grief like it's their identity. I chose joy," my voice returned. "This isn't retaliation. It's a record of who paid, of who disappeared, of who was rewritten as background." The screen faded to black. white text. Legacy doesn't need applause, just memory. I didn't move. Neither did they. The silence was full, taut. No music followed. No presenter rushed in. People shifted in their seats. At table 9, a woman whispered, "She paid for this." Another leaned toward her. That was her fiancé. And then, nothing. No rush to defend, no speeches. No one ran. Just the sudden weight of truth and the room's inability to pretend they hadn't heard it. I walked slowly to the exit. No one stopped me. I didn't look back. When you speak after being silenced, they call it an attack. My phone started buzzing before the sun even cleared the rooftops. It rattled the nightstand, vibrating against a coaster I never used until now. I let it go. Buzz. Pause. Buzz. Pause. I didn't reach for it, not right away. The Napa breeze curled through my cracked window, carrying the scent of eucalyptus and something faintly sweet, maybe someone's early brewed tea, a few doors down. The world outside felt soft, unaware. Inside, the air was sharp. Eventually, I looked. 38 messages, 12 missed calls, notifications stacked like unread headlines in a paper I no longer subscribed to. The first thing I saw wasn't a name, it was a face. Sienna. Crying. Lit by the soft glow of her patio lights, perfectly dampened eyes, shimmering just enough to catch the early morning filters. Her voice wavered. I didn't expect to be ambushed, especially not like that, not by her. Slide. She took something beautiful and turned it into punishment. Slide. Some people can't stand to see others healing. They'd rather remind you of every scar. Comments bloomed like weeds. You're so brave. Jealousy is loud. Keep shining. Your sister is clearly unwell. My thumb hovered. I didn't respond. I didn't defend. I didn't explain. Instead, I opened the file cabinet under my desk, took out the folio I had prepared weeks ago. Inside the podcast transcript, Julian's note, a printed photo of the ring, the navy velvet cloth now soft from being handled too often. I set them on the desk. My phone buzzed again. Mom, you embarrassed us. I hope you're happy. Then, after everything we gave you. Then Dad. You could have handled this like an adult. Then nothing. I blocked them both. Noah texted later. Just one line. They lost you long before the gala. That was enough. By noon I was packed. The drive to Denver was quiet. Long stretches of I-80 blurred into each other. No music. Just the steady rhythm of tires and a mind rehearsing what it didn't need to say. When I pulled into the driveway, everything looked exactly the same. The same lawn my father mowed in straight lines. The same porch swing that had been crooked since 2006. The same welcome mat, faded and stiff curling at the edges. I walked inside without knocking. The kitchen still smelled like coffee and expectation. Patricia turned from the sink. She didn't look surprised, just exhausted, like I had added an errand to her list. Martin sat at the table with the crossword puzzle glasses low on his nose. He didn't glance up. I didn't speak. I placed the folio on the table, slid it gently across the surface, deliberate, centered. Not to them, to the moment. Inside, the transcript peeked out. Julian's handwriting, familiar and alive. The velvet cloth folded cleanly over the flash drive like muscle memory knew where to crease. Mom looked at it, then at me. "What is this?" "It's not for you to read," I said. "It's for me to remember." She blinked her mouth, forming a question she didn't ask. Martin folded the paper once. Then again. "You made this public," he said quietly. "You turned family into theater." "No," I replied. "You did. I just stopped sitting in the audience." He exhaled. "You're still part of this family." I held his gaze. "Family doesn't erase." He said nothing. Patricia crossed her arms. "We gave you everything, a place to stay, support when you had no one. You gave me a roof," I said, and called it love. The silence that followed wasn't new, just older now. I picked up my keys, turned toward the door. As I reached the threshold, her voice followed, not loud, not begging, Just there. You never even asked why. I didn't turn around. Because the why never mattered. The how did. They sold the symbol. I kept the story. The morning fog clung low to the vineyard rows outside like a secret the earth wasn't quite ready to let go. Napa moved slower in September, grapes hanging full the air a little softer, like it had learned the art of patience. I unlocked the front door of my studio just after 8. The bell above the frame gave a soft chime as I stepped inside. The space smelled like warm wood and lemon oil with a faint trace of silver polish that clung to the corners. I slipped off my jacket, hung it behind the counter, and walked toward the display case beneath the front window. My reflection met me in the glass, no makeup hair tied back, eyes a little tired, but not heavy, not anymore. I lifted the lid of the small, spotlighted case. Inside the navy velvet cloth lay perfectly folded, its seams faded but intact. On top rested a single ring, daisy-etched, diamond and steel, unlabeled. I repositioned it slightly, just enough to catch the morning light angling through the window. Then I turned the sign to open. The shop warmed slowly, not just from the sun, but from the quiet rhythm of small things being done with care. I dusted shelves, straightened tools, restocked polishing cloths. The hammering station in the back caught a slant of gold light. Everything looked a little more certain than it did months ago. By 10, the first customer arrived, a woman in her 70s, neatly dressed, soft voice. She held a small envelope when she walked in, as if it might break open with memory if she let it go too soon. "I heard you make memory rings," she said. "I'd like to carry my husband with me, not just in photos." We sat at the work table by the window. She opened the envelope and pulled out a yellowed Polaroid. Him in a flannel shirt, her in a sweater too big, both grinning like the wind was in on a joke. She slid it forward. This was Utah, 1980. The daisy fields behind us were his favorite. I didn't speak, just nodded. We chose a design simple silver, a daisy etched on the inner band, not visible unless you knew where to look. As she left, she pressed a folded note into my hand. I didn't open it right away, but when I did later it read, "You don't sell memory, you carry it. Thank you." Shortly after, a young couple walked in. They were looking for wedding bands, not trendy ones, not statement pieces, just honest metal. "We don't want perfection," the bride-to-be said. "We want real." We sat together, drew a few sketches, laughed at one that looked unintentionally like a pretzel. By the end, they chose raw-cut bands, slightly uneven edges. Like us, the groom said. While they were filling out their order, their niece wandered toward the back shelf. She pressed her nose to the glass and pointed. "Who made that one?" she asked, tiny finger aimed at the daisy ring beneath the velvet cloth. I crouched beside her. "Someone who used to stay quiet," I said. She tilted her head. "Are they quiet now?" I smiled. "No, they just choose when to speak." Noah stopped by around noon. He didn't say much, just brought coffee, leaned against the counter, nodded at the soldering station, like he'd grown fond of the place, even if he still didn't know the tools' names. Before he left, he asked if I'd heard from them. I shook my head. No texts, no calls, no Sienna, no parents, just a long, uninterrupted quiet. But it didn't sting anymore, because this silence wasn't exile, it was mine. I walked to the front. The light had shifted. Outside, people wandered past a woman in running shoes, a man pushing a stroller, a teenager sipping boba. None of them came in. But one woman paused. She looked through the window. Not long, not with interest to buy, just looked. At the daisy ring, at the velvet cloth, at the little note beneath the glass that read in simple type, "This piece is not for sale. It cost everything to make." She didn't come inside. She didn't need to. I didn't wave, didn't beckon. I let her look. Sometimes that's enough. The daisy ring still sits quietly beneath glass, unworn, unsold, but never unloved. I didn't reclaim it to prove anything. I kept it to remember who I was before they asked me to forget. Sometimes healing isn't loud. It's in choosing what to carry forward and what to lay down. We may not get the apology we deserve, but we can still live with dignity, truth, and a steady kind of peace. If this story touched something in you, I'd love to know, what have you chosen to carry even when no one noticed?